Hi, and welcome to this edition of Fresh Hope for Mental Health. Our mission here at Fresh Hope for Mental Health is to empower you to live well in spite of your mental health challenge by sharing insights through interviews, practical tools for living well, encouragement, and courage for overcoming all from a Christian perspective. And now, here's your host, Pastor Brad Hoefs.
Hello, my friends, and welcome to this edition of Fresh Hope for Mental Health. I'm Brad Hoefs, your host, and our purpose here on Fresh Hope for Mental Health is to empower you to live a faith-filled, rich, and full life in spite of having a mental health diagnosis. Now, I want to share with you today, it's just me, and I want to just talk with you as one of my friends, and I came across and I don't even know where. I printed this off some time ago, and I've been meaning to record this because this little thing that I came across can be so helpful to people who are suffering from depression. So I want to talk with you about the 3 biggest mistakes depressed people make. The 3 biggest mistakes that depressed people make. And I know because I've done all 3 myself. But what I'm talking about is biological and environmental factors that contribute and sometimes can even cause bouts. But also I'm talking about this from a clinical perspective also, or clinical depression perspective also. And you know, the reality is that somehow, and this would be one of the mindsets or the ways of thinking that would be problematic, but I think when depression is there, when we're clinically depressed, or even when we're just struggling with sadness and all those kinds of things, when that's there, many times we think, okay, well, they put me on an antidepressant, it'll start working at some point. Well, you know, sometimes it takes 30 days, 90 days, or whatever. But sometimes the medicine has already begun to work, but we're not working with the medicine. We're kind of working against the medicine doing its thing. For instance, you can't take an antidepressant, and if you've created some bad habits during your clinical depression and now the medicine is starting to work, but you're not changing any of the habits, you're not changing any of your thinking, you're actually working against the medicine. And I heard a doctor one time say it's important to work alongside your medicine. And that's what this is really about today. So, 3 mistakes that depressed people make. Number 1, laying in bed until the absolute last minute. Oh my gosh. When I saw this the first time, I thought, oh, that hurts. But anybody who's faced depression will either, more times than not, be up way too late at night, have trouble sleeping, and then once they do sleep, then they can't get out of bed. They have problems getting out of bed and get the day going. And so I find this interesting because something as simple as this, deciding I will not stay in bed until the last minute. I will get up and I'll start the day according to what I know is the best to do as opposed to how I feel because I'm depressed. And it can be as simple as lifting yourself out of bed and getting out of bed and opening the blinds, getting some sunshine, turn on your favorite radio station, sit on the edge of the bed for 5 minutes and just give gratitude to the Lord for whatever. And what are you most grateful for? And that just those 3 things or those few things, it's going to begin to lift your spirit. Take the day on from a point of where you want to go as opposed to how you feel drowning in depression, drowning in sadness. Does it make sense? It's simple. Don't wait. Get up and have those few things that you can do immediately that help you. When I was not doing well, there was a point at which we had moved into our house. We had moved a house and then did all the stuff. I was in charge of getting all the stuff taken care of so we could move this farmhouse to a lot that was across the street from our church. And I was having a lot of trouble getting myself up in the morning and going over to the church. So I did something very practical. I put the coffee maker at the church, and that's where the coffee was. I made sure it wasn't at home. So if nothing else, I would get up, and my motivation, even in my deepest points of depression, were I wanted coffee in the morning. I still have to have my coffee in the morning. But it would force me to get up and dress, not always looking very good. Didn't always comb my hair. But I would go over to the church office and make coffee. And then I'd stay there. So it's something that simple. But staying in bed doesn't help you. It does not help you. And sometimes you have to force yourself to do things that feel impossible. And when you do things that feel impossible and you achieve it, you know what? You feel more empowered to fight against the depression. The second thing is thinking about the problem all day. I know this, that when we're depressed, when we're clinically depressed, many times what we do is just wallow. We think about whatever it is that's happened or how we feel. We think about it. I can't. I don't want to go there. Or we just totally escape all day and don't do any of the things that we know that we need to do. And it's so easy to think about it all day and let it consume our day. One of the things Don and I learned when we were going through the grief after her mother had died, and it was hard because her mom died she lost her life to bipolar disorder and died by suicide. And the grief was so intense. It was so difficult. And one of the things, though, a therapist told us is, okay, you can start your day and say, I'm going to spend the first 30 minutes doing this. Then I'm going to sit down and I'm going to grieve. And instead of letting the grief come at you, you go for the grief. You go for what you need to. And then you say to yourself, I will approach grief again tonight. But you live the rest of the day without doing the grief. And, it was much easier said than done. But it helped. It helped. And I think if you and I say to ourselves, I can't have the whole day consumed by my depression. I can't be stuck in my depressive thinking all day. I've got to do some things that are regular. Maybe at first you don't spend a lot of time doing the regular stuff, but you at least get some of it done. Sometimes you have to have mini habits, MINI habits, just enough that you feel successful. And then the more you're able to do it, the stronger you become. And you can say to yourself, I'm not letting my whole day be consumed by this. And the mistake is to just let it swallow you and wallow in it. Third mistake is feeding the depression monster. Oh boy, that monster is a monster. And by the way, the depression monster lies to you. He will tell you, "Oh, you can't do this," or you're not able to get up today, and you just can't go out, and you just can't do this. Depression is hungry. That monster is very hungry and needs food to sustain itself, if you will. And it definitely prefers the meal of drugs, alcohol, and ridiculous amounts of carbohydrates. It also enjoys it if we feed it in isolation, along with music and or movies that make us feel sad. On the sad side, of course, always. Try this instead. Put your depression monster on a diet. Eliminate drugs, alcohol, and overeating from your life. Ask for help if you need it. Take it in small steps. Stay connected to the positive people in your life. If there are none, then go out and meet some new people. Do things that you've never done before. And while popular culture likes for all of us to believe that listening to sad music and or movies is what we're supposed to do when we're depressed, it isn't. Have you ever felt like conquering the world after you listen to a song about a heartbreaking breakup? So one of the things that you can do is put that depression monster on that diet. Will these things cure depression? No, and especially not clinical depression. However, they will be things that can work with the medicine to help you overcome the depression. And, it's easier said than done. I know. I've been there. I've been suicidal. I have lived some very dark days. And you know what? I made all three of these mistakes, and I kept making them. So maybe just sit down and think about taking one of these at a time, or maybe a little bit of all three. But mistake number one, laying in bed until the absolute last minute or all day. Mistake number two, thinking about the problem all day. And mistake number three, feeding the depression monster. If you can overcome those, if you could quit making those mistakes at least, and doing the opposite, so to speak, I believe that your medicine will not only work better, but you'll be working alongside of your medicine better. So for what it's worth, I offer those three things to you. Well, I hope that's helpful. I think it's helpful. I wish I would have run across that when I was depressed. Of course, I was so depressed at the time, I probably wouldn't have looked or read it or said, that will work for others, but I can't do that. So I know in my undepressed mind or non-depressed mind, and in my healthy mindset, I know, no, those are things that I got to remember in spite of how I feel in the future. If I face that kind of depression, I just need to do them. And like I've told many of you through the years, I bought a book. Julie Fast wrote the book. And I think the title is something like, Get It Done While You're Depressed. I got to be honest, the title was so good I never needed to read the book. It just told me everything I needed to know right in that title, even though I own the book. So I hope that's helpful to you. Lord, I lift up those who are depressed. I lift up those who are struggling with clinical depression right now. And I just ask that you would give them the strength to overcome these lies of that depression monster. Help them to put that monster on a diet. Help them to get up and face the day starting from where it is they want to go in the day, as opposed to feeling like they're already done in by that depression monster. And Lord, help them to be able to rule over that depression monster in their thinking throughout the day, that they might have the strength to think about other things and to not allow that monster to have its way all day. I pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. Well, I'd really like to hear from you, seriously. Pastor Brad at freshhope.us. Maybe there's a topic you'd like to see us cover, or somebody we need to interview. Maybe you need to tell your story so it can encourage others. In any case, just write me, Pastor Brad at freshhope.us, and you can find Fresh Hope all over by just Googling us, or go to freshhope.us. We've got lots of resources, all kinds of things. But one of the latest things that we've started to do is create a 12/7, our Hope 12/7 network, which is basically every day for 12 hours of every day for 7 days a week. We have various kinds of meetings you can attend online. And you can find our online meetings there. There's all kinds of options for you so that there's a way to plug in, so that if you're having a bad day, you can find 2 or 3 or 4 meetings out of those 12 hours that are going to be helpful to you. Okay? So check that out. Just go to freshhope.us. And if you would, leave a comment if you're listening to this on iTunes. It helps other people find the podcast, as I've said every time we close a podcast. So be sure to tell your friends about this program. And until the next time, may the Lord fill you with His hope, fresh and new daily. I'm Brad Hoefs, and this has been another edition of Fresh Hope for Mental Health.
You've been listening to Fresh Hope for Mental Health. If you have an opportunity, please review, share, and subscribe to the Fresh Hope for Mental Health podcast on iTunes or on the service that you use. We encourage you to share our podcast on social media with your friends and family. Previous podcasts of Fresh Hope for Mental Health can be found at freshhopeformentalhealth.com, iHeartRadio, Stitcher Radio, and iTunes. Fresh Hope is one of the leading networks of faith-based peer support groups internationally. For more information about Fresh Hope, go to freshhope.us.